Hi there. My name's Ruben. I'd like to give kind of a trip report today of the time that I first attempted to do 5 dried grams in silent darkness. If you don't know, this is what Terence McKenna dubbed a heroic dose, and it's the method that he preferred to take psilocybin mushrooms. 5 grams is a lot. I know that there's people on YouTube and everywhere that eat way more than that. And that look down on 5 grams and don't like that that's called a heroic dose because they say that more is so much better and different and whatever. But I guess this video is focused towards people that haven't even done 5 grams. But it is a lot. It is a lot. And I would tell that to people that are way more experienced and went to those higher levels than I have, because it is a lot, okay? There's a lot of psilocybin. The key aspect, however, that Terence is getting at with that is the silent darkness. The inward, when the inward focus on your inward journey and your internal space. That's hard to do when you've got a laser light going on, or you're, tripping with a bunch of people, or you're at a music festival. It's pretty hard to have an inward journey when you're in a crowd of 100,000 people, or at least it's, for me it would be. So the silent darkness funnels all that crazy energy that is released in your brain back into your brain, and it's a wild ride. It's a very, very wild ride, and like I said, I know there is many more levels to get to, and there's way more to explore. But I feel like the heroic dose of 5 grams is kind of a rite of passage and a threshold into the full immersion psilocybin world. So, a little backstory. I have always been very experienced through my teens and 20s with psychedelic drugs. Pretty much all of them, synthetic or plant. I definitely did a lot. It was always at music festivals or hanging out with a bunch of people. I never really had like an inward journey. So while I gained a lot from that part of my life, I got to a point where I was like, adults don't need to do psychedelic drugs anymore. I don't need to do this anymore. I'm too old. I'm too worried about things, blah, blah, blah. And then so for several years, I didn't do any. And then through, reading, I became very interested in like the consciousness expansion world and all the authors involved with that, like Timothy Leary and Alan Watts and Ram Dass and, all that. Which inevitably led me to Terence McKenna. And Terence McKenna, I fell in love with his book, Food of the Gods. I listened to his talks, listened to his audiobooks, read all his books. I mean, I really just really prescribed to what he was selling. And his, description of how he uses psychedelic mushrooms as a tool spoke to me as an adult, and I was like, you know what, I think I could do that. I think I have the mental makeup for that. So, I knew I couldn't just dive right in, so I kind of experimented with dosages for maybe a year to kind of cross-train and get prepared, and was very well researched and everything going into my experience. And so there was a week that was coming up in the summer, and my family was going to be out of town. I had the house to myself. I was like, great. I'm not responsible for anybody else. Here we go, blast off, Now, I wouldn't say it was a bad trip, but there's definitely some mistakes I made along the way that I can tell people, hey, you don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. But, when it comes down to it, is mushrooms do not give you what you want or expect. They give you what you need. And I maybe had read that, but I didn't believe it, didn't understand it, didn't realize it at the time. So the first mistake I made was getting away from Terence's suggested method, where he said to just eat the mushrooms. Don't make a smoothie, don't put them in a peanut butter sandwich. He's like, just eat the mushrooms. Everything else is malarkey. Well, I lemon teched the 5 grams, which if you don't know what that is, it's grinding up the mushrooms and soaking them in straight lemon juice for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. And what this does, supposedly, I've read, some people believe it, some don't, is it chemically digests the psilocybin into psilocin, which is what's active in your brain. I don't know if it chemically does it, but it definitely kicks in quicker. And that might just be because you soaked it and ground it up. I'm not sure, but the come up was so quick and so intense. It was like a roller coaster or a rocket ship. The amount of energy that was being like balled up and released inside my brain was equivalent to a bomb or a thunderstorm going off outside the window. I didn't have time to settle in. I didn't have time to kind of, get into the flow and be like, oh, okay, I got to lay down for this one. It hit me while I was still getting everything ready. So my set might have been okay, but I was thrown into the setting kind of haphazardly. There was still music on, the window was still open with the blinds open, and I was, pushed off the ledge on a rocket ship without really knowing where we were going yet. So that kind of threw me for a loop. And I wasn't able to give in because I was still like trying to be like, whoa, my seatbelt's not on. Where, first off, there's no seatbelt. And secondly, you have to give in. You can't fight it. So when you're approaching an ego death experience, which I believe that 5 grams is able to get you to that level, if you don't give in and your ego fights back while it's getting pulled away from your consciousness, well, it's very uncomfortable. It's very stressful and scary, and all of your ego starts throwing all of your human emotions at your consciousness, and it's very hard to comprehend what's going on. So I never got my feet set. Every time that I would lay down and try and be quiet in the dark, I would get shaken out of it and think I had to throw up or drink water or, at some point I was thinking of calling 911 or yelling help outside. Like I just didn't know what was going on. I had convinced myself that I took poisonous mushrooms. I didn't even remember I ate mushrooms. I was like, I've been poisoned. I'm dying. I'm going to die. And that was just my ego fighting back. And I don't know if I totally lost my ego. I know that I couldn't recognize like the photos of my family that were, around the room. I believe I still knew my name. I guess I wasn't calling myself, but I couldn't figure out how a phone worked. By the time I was like, oh yeah, this is a trip going on, I tried to look at a clock to see how long it had been, and I couldn't understand what numbers were. I actually saw like the numbers like float away into the room, and I was like touching them. It was full on. The visuals were uncontrollable with my eyes open. And I was going between laying down with my eyes closed, and then the closed eye visuals were so intense that they basically became a dream. And it was like reliving memories, living alternate realities with friends that had died, and having moments in the future with them still alive, looking in the mirror and seeing people that were dead talk to you and tell you took my friend who had died about a year before that, I looked in the mirror and it was him, and he said, you took too much. So visuals like that, where everyone's like, oh, I'm getting visuals. Once they get to the point where you can't stop them and can't distinguish them from reality, I don't know. It's a different world. That's different from tracers. But yeah, like moving paisley kind of designs and fractals, and then that thing that looks like eyes blink. Everything's made of a fabric of eyes blinking. Kind of looks like that dream software or whatever that people use to edit photos. I mean, that is very realistic. If anyone's ever seen those photos and gotten to that level of a psychedelic experience like that, those photos give me flashbacks because they're that realistic. So yeah, and by the time, and it was very wavy. I would be like out, like floating around in my head, floating around in space, having all these realizations, of being like, oh my God, like I've been here before. This is what happens when you die. I've been here before. Everybody's been here before. A countless amount of times. This has never began and it never ended. And you die, you go up, you come back down, and it's just a cycle. And you remember that so clearly. So I believe that was the full ego death, coming to that realization. But then you would open your eyes and you would be like, oh, I'm going to puke. And you would go in the bathroom. And like, I remember trying to make myself puke, but I was like, it felt like I was sticking my hand all the way into my stomach. And I could, it was weird. And so like the physical aspect was awful, but the mental aspect was great. And it was very hard to know how long I had been under. I mean, when you're up in the galaxy, like in this, and you're floating around, and there's no body, and you're just a consciousness among the rest of everything that is consciousness. I mean, what is time at that point, I mean, it felt like eons. It felt like I was there forever. And then when I would open my eyes, it was so disorienting to be back in a human body that I would just lose my mind. And I'd be wandering around the house. I was like sitting there for like 10 minutes flicking the light on and off because I didn't even know what was going on. And by the time I was like, oh, it's over, I looked and it had been an hour and a half. And then, there's another wave that kicked, but it wasn't as intense. And I think after about 2 hours, I was like finally able to figure out what a phone was again. And I was like, I got to call someone. So I called my friend, and I thought I was done, and I thought I was explaining what happened really well. And he said that I was just rambling like I was Hunter Thompson. So, that went on kind of all night. I was still tripping. Like I got to a point where I could walk around the neighborhood and it was cool and everything, and it was a good time. But it was just very hard to understand. Most of the lessons have come afterwards. Just telling this story on this camera right now, I'm remembering more and more. Every time I tell a story, I'm like, oh yeah, and that happened. Oh yeah, and that happened. I look at it like I received a big download from the universe, but it was a zip file. And if you're trying to understand it while it's coming at you, you can't. It's too much information too quick. Once you unzip it, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. One specific thing that I've taken from that I like to kind of explore the possibilities of is the idea of like manifestation of your inner psyche, your wants, what you want out of your reality or your perception of reality. I believe you can manifest it. And a part of my story that I'll tell now and before the video's over involves that, I believe. Some people might chalk it up to coincidence, but here it goes. So in between one of the waves, I'm like, oh man, this is scary. And I was like, I can't do Silent Darkness anymore. I can't lay down anymore. I just need music. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to get music. I like music. What makes music? And I'm a musician, and I went downstairs to where I knew my guitars were, and they was just very foreign. And I was like trying to turn amps on. And then I did have a thought. I'm like, I'm going to start a fire. I don't understand how electricity works. This is bad. And I turned everything off and went back upstairs. So I was like, all right, and this thing makes music. And I pick up my phone, and I was like, and I'm just like swiping at it like a caveman. And I don't even have like voice recognition on my phone, but I was like, I remembered the Flaming Lips. That's like my favorite band, and whenever I trip, I like them. I like listening to them. I've tripped at their concerts. They're a big psychedelic companion for me. And I remember them. I'm just like, Flaming Lips, Flaming Lips, Wayne Coyne. I just want Wayne, and I'm like, it's not doing anything because I don't have that option on my phone. But I had those names, and I was calling them out for I don't know how long. Well, anyway, fast forward to the rest of the trip. Another mistake that I had made with this was bad planning, to where actually the next morning I was leaving on a plane to go meet my family in Florida, where we were going on a cruise, which is I don't like, and I didn't want to go, honestly. So I'm up all night processing what happened. And my cousin takes me to the airport. I get on the plane and I'm flying. And I'm listening to Terrence McKenna, like a audiobook or a speech or something. And I'm looking down out of the plane window at the earth and cities and towns and everything. And I'm just starting to really like have all these like crazy thoughts about what our place is within the earth and within the universe, and how insignificant we are, and we're just the ants that are building stuff and whatever, having all these thoughts. And I was like, I gotta stop listening to like philosophy. I just want, oh yeah, the Flaming Lips. Yeah, that's right. I gotta listen to the Flaming Lips. So I'll start listening to Flaming Lips in my headphones. So I have to change flights at the Charlotte airport. And I'm walking, listening to the Flaming Lips. And a guy walks past me. He looks like Steven, the guitar player from the Flaming Lips. And I'm like, what? No. And I was like, okay, I'm tripping. And I keep walking, and across the hallway in front of me, Wayne Coyne walks right in front of me. I'm like, what? And I'm like, okay, so I'm still tripping. I'm like, this is one of the dreams. My eyes are closed. I'm going to wake up and have to throw up or something. And I'm like, this is not real. And I see a dude come up and like shake his hand and take a selfie with him and stuff. And I'm like, that is Wayne Coyne from the Flaming Lips at the Charlotte airport, where I'm trying to catch a connecting flight. Okay. And I see that he's really friendly with the dude. So I'm like, I have to go talk to him, obviously. And so I don't want to like run through the airport, but I'm like power walking to try and catch up with him. And he's wearing the suit that he wears at all their shows. His hair's a mess. He's got a Walmart shopping bag with a toothbrush and looked like some clothes in it. And he's like spinning it around. And he's walking real fast. And so I'm like trying to catch up to him. And I'm getting really far away from where I have to go too. And I was like kind of cutting it close. And I'm like, crap, I got to talk to him. So then I hit a spot where there's one of those people mover things. And he went on the side of it and didn't take it. I was like, here's my chance. So I got on that and kind of ran on the people mover. And we got to the end at the same time. And I'm like out of breath. I'm like completely emotionally overwhelmed. And I like put my hand on his shoulder. I'm like, Wayne, dude, I'm just like rambling and kind of crying. Well, okay, I'm crying. And I'm like, Wayne, I don't want to like hold you up or take a selfie or whatever. I just want to tell you that your music means so much to me, and it's been there through so many important parts of my life. I've seen you like 5 times, and you're my favorite live show, one of my favorite artists. Blah blah blah. Just rambling on, and like tears coming out of my eyes, And I'm a big dude. I'm 6'2", and he's a little dude, And he just put his arm on my shoulder. He's like, "It's okay, man. Calm down." He like kind of gave me a side hug, and he's like, that's really awesome to hear. He's like, what are you doing at the airport, or where are you going? And I was like, well, I'm meeting up with my family, and we're going on a cruise, and I was just listening to you, and it was crazy or whatever, and he was like, that's amazing to hear, man. And he shook my hand. He's like, what was your name? And then he was like, well, I hope you have a good time on your cruise, and I hope to see you at a concert again. And that was it, And I took a picture of him from behind. I didn't take a selfie because it just, I don't know, that moment, I don't need a picture of it, and I could tell in his eyes that it meant a lot too. I mean, I'm sure he's had 1,000 of those same experiences, but he's a real genuine guy, and I know that meant a lot to him too. And not to say that he remembers it like I do, but yeah. So I don't know. Yes, that could be a coincidence, but come on, man, that is a crazy coincidence to not be that I manifested that situation. They weren't any like. I don't know what their tour schedule was, but they were just doing connecting flights too. Like it was just crazy. It's crazy. And so I can post some other videos of some other like manifestation things, but I wanted to add that in because it's part of a very important experience I had with psilocybin mushrooms. And I've had hundreds of psilocybin experiences that are magical, but not a lot like kind of matches up to that. I have another story too that I'll post another video about, but the flaming lips seem to be tied in with like some manifestation that I have. So anyway, this video went a little long, but I wanted to tell my experience of the mushrooms and tell the story of the day after that kind of threw me for more of a loop almost than the actual experience. So, again, I'm not advocating the use of psilocybin mushrooms. Everyone should make that decision on their own. Don't write me asking for any. I don't have any. Don't send me any. I don't want anyone to send me any. But this is the experience that I had. And if someone chooses to do it, they will probably have a different experience. Or they'll have a similar experience. I don't know. Anyway, this is Help Find the Others. If anyone wants to post a video explaining a 5 dried grams that they did, or have a Skype interview and talk about it, or post any other videos, or have any other sorts of interviews, email at helpfindtheothers@protonmail.com, and let's work together to help promote consciousness expansion. Thank you.